From SBI's Executive Briefing Center in Dallas, Texas, the most watched and listened to content in B2B sales and marketing, it's the SBI Podcast with your host, Matt Shares.
Welcome to the SBI TV show, a weekly show dedicated to helping you make your number. I am your host, Tony Erickson, Managing Director at SBI. Recently, SBI held our 28th Client Advisory Board meeting. I was fortunate to orchestrate a group of 14 Chief Revenue Officers in software, technology, business services to collaborate with their peers regarding top-of-mind subjects. As luck would have it, today we are joined by SBI Advisory Board member, repeat SBI TV guest, and fan favorite, JD Miller, Chief Revenue Officer at Motus. Welcome, JD. Thanks for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Tony. It's great to be back.
Absolutely. Good to have you. Could you take a moment and introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. I'm JD Miller, and I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Motus. We're a company that helps workforces kind of work forward into the new reality of the new mobile work environments.
Excellent. Excellent. So, JD, topic for today's discussion, for the past year, one hot area we have been continually hearing from our advisory board program is out in the field, the concept of going back to work. What does it look like? Leading up to the advisory board, the CROs in the program suggested it would be beneficial for the group, now our SBI TV audience, to hear more from a peer on this topic. They wanted to hear how other CROs have executed engaging, educational, and efficient back-to-work type events. In our cab, JD had shared some of the experiences Motus recently created, and he's here to discuss them today. JD, you had a compelling segment discussing the concept of collaborative hybrid events, and at Motus, what you all think returning to work might look like. Walk us through your executive leadership team's thought process, the key players, and design principles of executing a successful hybrid event.
Yeah, thanks. Well, we began the conversation really the day that the pandemic started. At Motus, we left our offices in March 17th. And really on that afternoon, we realized that however long the pandemic was going to last, this notion of going back to work wasn't really an adequate one because we said the future of work is going to be fundamentally different, at least in the short term, whenever offices reopen. And now a year later, we've realized that as many businesses have learned that they can perform effectively from home, it's something that a lot of people don't want to do anymore. And so we began really rethinking a year ago, what would it be like if we could untether us from physical offices? And so those conversations led us to a couple of key things. The first is we really talked about what are our core values as a company, and what are the core values we try to extend to our employees, and then how do we ensure that we still live that life out, whether we're doing it in a co-located office, whether we're doing it from home, whether we're doing it online, or some mixture in the future. So at Motus, we really don't use the word going back to work because we know it's never going to be like it was before. We talk about working forward into a new reality where we're allowing people to work anywhere and still having a vibrant culture as a result.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, JD, you guys even decided to go completely virtual during the pandemic. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I haven't been in an office now in 14 or 15 months. As the pandemic is starting to relax controls, we are starting to get together in some physical environments. But one of the things we talked about at Motus is really what's the environment that people want to return to. And so, a lot of the office buildings that we used to have space in have lots of barriers, lots of social distancing, lots of separation, and they're not the comfy, cozy places that we left just a year ago. So instead, we've really started to turn towards, what are experiences that we can provide for our employees that will be memorable, will advance our work goals, will allow people to build teams, and really get work done. And so some of the smaller meetings that I've had, we've rented out interesting restaurants and interesting venues in different cities for small groups to get together. Restaurants are a great place, one, because they've been suffering through the pandemic, but two, they know all about sanitation and how to keep things clean. And a lot of times they're interesting places that your employees haven't been or would like to see, or are in unique locations. And so we've really been thinking about, if we have a physical event, how can we really have a temporary pop-up office in an interesting place? And for our larger events that still need to be virtual, how can we incorporate some of these unique locations in a way that gives that experience to all our participants, whether they're at home or physically with us in the same room.
Excellent. So JD, thinking about large-scale memorable events, one of the most memorable events that most companies do every year is their annual SKO, or sales kickoff. So how has the SKO event and the future of not only your internal SKO, but those customer-facing events, and how have you leveraged microsites to drive intimacy, create a more memorable experience, whether clients are going to be virtual or face-to-face or in a hybrid mode?
Yeah, so our sales kickoff was in January of this year, and I'm a Chicagoan. Chicago was still in a place where there would be no way I could fly my whole sales team to be co-located in a single place. In January, I think it was a limit of 10 people could be in a single venue in Chicago. And certainly we could have searched for other places around the country. But we really used it as an opportunity to think about, how do you make a really effective online, or we actually landed on sort of a hybrid event, to be a model for really what work would look like this year for those kinds of things. And so it led us to a partnership with a theater downtown Chicago called the Auditorium Theater. It's a big landmark in the city. When it was built in 1886, it was the largest indoor theater in the world. It seats about 5,000 people. And, for a sales kickoff, we asked them if they would be our virtual host. So what did a virtual host mean? Well, we knew that most of our salespeople were going to be dialing in online through some sort of a Zoom type experience, but we really wanted to give them a sense of place. And so the Auditorium Theater was the place that I got to broadcast from, and was able to bring a handful of top performers or leaders, staying under that 10-person limit, to kind of be in this historic, beautiful, architecturally significant place. But then for the rest of our attendees, we really wanted them to feel as if they were in the Auditorium Theater with us as well. So we worked with the auditorium to really divide up our meetings. We had sales kickoff across 4 days. And so we asked the auditorium if they could provide little 10 or 15-minute tours that would sort of separate out some of the, Zoom fatigue. And so each day, an actor or a crew member would take us and a camera on some sort of a tour of the building. I got to go way up in the catwalks and see the thunder and lightning machines that make it rain on stage. We got to see some tiny performances. We got to see dressing rooms, really taking, what's a big venue, and see some of the very smallest spaces that are accessible to, just a camera and one or two people. And that did a couple of things. For the virtual participants, it let them see something they hadn't ever seen before. And so we left people with this sort of only at Motus experience, some sort of exclusive backstage access kind of experience for them. But it also really grounded us in a sense of place. So whether you were in the theater with me or you were at home, you felt like you understood where you were. We also rounded it out by mailing packages to all of our participants that we had curated with the auditorium. And so our agenda was printed out like a playbill, like you would see if you had gone to a Broadway show. We filled it with concession candy and popcorn and all of the things that are physically there. So whether you're on a screen or whether you were there in person, you had this memorable sort of event experience that really left our participants saying, when we get back to all being together, could we have our next sales kickoff there, because we want to actually be in that building in person, because we feel like we've gotten to know the staff and the crew and the performers as well.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love the local community aspect of it and how you guys were able to work with those historical buildings. I think you also worked with some local businesses, right, in support of local businesses to actually do some of the gift boxes and create memorable events, not only for that event, but for some of your other annual or quarterly business reviews and planning sessions.
You're right. So one of the things that's grown out of is really Motus's commitment to giving back to the communities that we live and work in. And so even when we were doing physically co-located events, we always had a sense of philanthropy that if we're going to come together for a sales kickoff, we're also going to have a team building activity that's, volunteering to shelve books at a library or repaint a school or something like that. And so when we started to craft our virtual event experiences, we really wanted to incorporate that sort of philanthropic bent. And so in planning them, we took a look again at the communities that we live and work in and said, who are the people that are suffering the most? And so we found a lot of small businesses. There was a local candy store that, again, would be way too small to bring all of my salespeople into, but, comfortably fits like 2 people in a candy maker. And their business had dropped 60% during the pandemic because, tourists weren't walking around buying candy. Mm-hmm. And so we asked them to be a virtual host. They brought me and the camera in and showed me how to dip chocolate and how to make fudge and make marshmallows and sent that out. We had an event with a winery in California that had been burned in the campfires earlier this year. So we learned about how they were, recasting their wine that had been ruined in the heat and, creating a vinegar-based barbecue sauce and sharing that with people and petting their goats and seeing their animals and all of that kind of stuff. So, when you think about your community, kind of the neat thing about virtual is you can go to a lot of unique places that you couldn't bring hundreds of people together at once, but you can give these very personalized, very meaningful one-on-one experiences sort of at mass scale.
Yeah, those are great tips. Great tips, especially as we think about working forward, as you put it. I like that phrase. So great ideas there. Okay, another topic is getting into the concept of one of the most challenging things that our clients and every company we know has been facing throughout the pandemic is the actual top of funnel and generating top of funnel leads. Knowing how the buyer journey has accelerated towards digital, generating more digital interactions at the top of funnel versus 2020 has been paramount to company success. Where do you see the future events making an impact on the sales funnel as you think about hybrid events, virtual events, or even going back to in-person to drive demand?
I think that's a really interesting question. As we were working on our sales kickoff, we were viewing it as sort of a pilot of, how will we produce events in 2021 when they start to be customer facing, and what will our customer loyalty event look like, or what will trade shows look like? And we learned a couple of things. One is that when you have an event that has a virtual component to it, the threshold to join becomes much lower. And so it's possible for you to have much bigger participation. I think a lot of people are used to, the big customer gathering that's a 2-day event at some big hotel in Las Vegas or wherever it is. And that actually has a lot of barriers to it. It costs money to travel. You've got to take a couple of days off of work. You're completely, out of the office and away from things to really participate in it. And so you have to be pretty committed to the vendor whose event you're going to go to. When you have a virtual event, you can publish an agenda and allow people to just drop in for, 15 minutes at a time, or, look through the 20 different keynote sessions and choose the 2 topics that they want to participate in. And so we really think that, the future of our customer gatherings is going to be a bit of a hybrid where certainly there's a lot of benefit to being all together in one big room. And I know a lot of people are looking forward to all of the hype and excitement that you can get when you've got, a live band and, big mass crowds talking about a product launch or something like that. And so we're definitely going to be doing those kinds of events. But we also now always think that they need to be streamed online, and they need to have a hybrid model as well, so that if you've got less committed customers or less committed prospects who are earlier in the cycle, you can let them come in at a very low barrier and have a taste of it as well, and really experience that. So I think, unfortunately, what we've learned from our success in the pandemic is it's probably going to be twice as much work for events people, because they'll have to produce virtual and co-located experiences at the same time.
Well, that's definitely going to be an exciting future, because I think we're all dealing with the interesting opportunity that if you can make events virtual and cut them into bite-sized chunks, they're easily consumable by your ideal customers. However, there's also the opportunity that you will still long for, to create that person-to-person interaction. So it's going to be an interesting hybrid motion in the future as you think about large customer events, large advisory boards. So I see it as an opportunity to evolve the way we've always done it. And to your point, which I really agree with, and I think we're seeing as a trend in the industry, the 2 to 3 days completely unplugged and off-site is going to become less and less. And the 2 to 3 hours here and there covering very topical ideas and areas of interest are going to be where it's moving towards. So I agree with you. The events teams are definitely going to have their work cut out for them, but clients will be able to get very bespoke learnings and content-rich information in the exact form that they need it at the time they need it. So that's going to be an exciting future for us all.
Yeah, I agree with you. When you think about the content produced too, I think what we've learned over the last year is we've really raised the bar on the quality that people are expecting. When people began turning on their cameras working from home, I was a home worker all the time for many years before the pandemic happened, but it was always phone calls. And now everything is a video call, and everyone's on camera. And I think what people have learned is that it can be physically tiring and taxing. And so if they're going to have a video experience with someone, they want it to be exceptionally meaningful. Mm-hmm. And so when I look across the last year or so of selling motions, we see that our clients and prospects are very jealous of their time, or jealously guarding their time. And so they want to get to good quality content really quickly. And they're also really quick to qualify in or out on, am I going to have another sales call with you? Do I want to have another conversation with you? Because it's going to take a toll on me to separate out a corner of my house for the next half-hour conversation and make sure the kids and the dogs are out of the room and do all of that. Now, the good of that is the meetings that we're having are way more effective. So when we looked at conversion rates last year, we converted to sale a lot at much higher rates than we ever saw before. But I think it's because clients and prospects early on are deciding, I'm going to qualify out of this and not invest the time because of the extra cost it has for them to be engaged. Yeah,
that is absolutely a trend throughout the industry right now. Is conversion rates, win rates are increasing. Pipeline coverage ratios appear to be decreasing for that exact reason. So, kind of going to this whole theme of getting digital visibility into top of the funnel so that you can convert those into mid-funnel. If you can continue the win rates that you're seeing, it's going to be an awesome revenue growth opportunity for companies who can execute well and execute flawlessly in that virtual motion.
Yeah, and I really appreciated hearing those experiences at your customer conference. So, of course, you guys, work with the leaders in sales from a variety of different industries, and really hearing that experience continued through the rest of your customer base and participants in the events was really meaningful to me too. So thank you for convening us to share some of that. Thank you for being a multi-time participant. We look forward to bringing you back to our event in the fall, where, who knows, perhaps we'll be doing a hybrid event, and maybe you'll be joining me at the studio, and we'll have some people joining us virtually or via avatar or whatever technology comes out in the next 6 months to have a great fall customer event where we'll be in a hybrid motion. I think it'll be holograms. I'll look forward to it. There you go. We will beam you in. All right, JD, thank you so much for the time today. Thank you for being a CAB participant as always. We definitely appreciate the partnership between SBI and Motus, and look forward to working together with you in the future. Thanks, Tony. It's good to be with you again.
Thank you for attending this session of SBI TV. We really want to thank J.D. Miller for spending time with us today to share his insights to the Client Advisory Board. And for all of you out there in our audience, we appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. We know there's many options out there for where you get your growth expertise, and we appreciate you spending time with SBI. And as always, we wish you luck as you try to make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on the studio, SBI's Executive Briefing Center, our team, or to schedule a workshop, please visit salesbenchmarkindex.com.